Hello friends, welcome back to Exploring Art. I hope you had a great week. We're going to do some wonderful things today as we always do, but let's introduce some of our new friends to what we do here. In Exploring Art, I introduce you to either a particular artist or a style of work, and then we create our own work of art that is inspired by the artist or the piece of work that we talked about. Now we've looked at a lot of different art and a lot of different artists over our time together. And today's will be fun as it always is. But remember, when we get to the creating part of our time together, our thoughts here is you are the artist. You're going to create it your own way in the way that you are inspired to do so. Okay? But we're going to learn about somebody and kind of get a sense of what their style is before we create. But as always, we have to get started by getting our supplies together. Okay, so we're going to need our messy tray, right? You don't want to make a mess on the table. Today we're going to need a piece of white paper. If you have something a little heavier today, that would be great, like construction paper or art paper instead of just white coloring paper. A little heavier would be good because we're going to paint today, okay? A black crayon, and then either tempera paints or watercolor paints. And that's all we're going to need today, okay? So a piece of white paper, a black crayon, and then either tempera paints or watercolor paints. Okay, let's learn about today's artist. Here he is. Doesn't he look like a nice guy? He looks like somebody, he might be your grandpa. He's a nice guy. His name is Ted Harrison, and he was a British-Canadian painter noted for his colorful landscape paintings of the Yukon. So he uses a lot of colors, so make sure that you have the colors that you like because we're using a lot of colors today. He was born on August 28th in 1926 in England. He was born in England, and he studied at the Hartlepool School of Art, where he later taught for 30 years. So he loved art, he studied art, he was an art teacher for 30 years, okay? His career took off when he moved in 1967 from England to northern Canada. So he moved to the United States, he moved to Canada, where he was deeply inspired by the rustic landscapes of his surrounding. So lots of mountains and peaks and valleys and nature, all kinds of wonderful things to see there. His works are characterized by almost psychedelic color palettes, like I said, lots of color today, in which the sun and mountains are given mystical credence. So sun and mountains, sun, moon, mountains, landscape, that's what we're gonna do today, okay? His painting called Alone in the Great North has a purple sun setting in an orange sky. And I'm going to show you some of his colorful work in a minute. He was also a children's book illustrator, okay? And then he died at the age of 88 in 2015 in Canada. So he's a British-Canadian painter who enjoyed landscapes and color. So let me show you some of the things. Here we go. Look at this example. What colors do you see there? I see pinks, I see purples, I see blues, I see whites. Can you see the sun and mountains? Can you see how that's inspired landscape? It's like a river there. So things that he saw, but he saw them through a lens of just wonderful colors, right? And here's another one. You see there. I really like this here. The colors coming off of the sun in the corners of the sunset or the sunrise, all kinds of things. And there's our dark mountain peaks there, bodies of water. And you can see he's got little people in this one here. So his landscapes of the Yukon and lots of color. So that's what we're going to do today. We're going to create our very own brightly colored landscape painting inspired by the work of British-Canadian painter Ted Harrison. All right, so let's grab our stuff. Here's our piece of paper. Here's our black crayon, right? So we're gonna start by drawing what we want to draw in our landscape. So I'm gonna say perhaps some mountains, right? Perhaps some water, perhaps some land. So, okay, so I've got my messy tray and my crayon, and I think I'm gonna draw some mountains. I'm gonna draw a high mountain, and maybe a lower mountain. And I'm going to draw the sun setting behind the mountain. And then, oh, I don't know, Maybe I'll draw a line here to represent like where the ground is. Okay, so this is what I'm starting with. Here we go. So I drew some mountains. There's my sun, either setting or rising. Here's maybe where our grass will be. I don't know. So I used a black crayon to draw the outlines. And what that's going to do is that's going to define where our colors go. And you want to make that a pretty dark line. Okay? Doesn't have to be perfect, remember? Art is creative and art is fun. So I'm going to just make my lines a little bit darker. And if we look at this piece of Ted Harrison's work, you can see that he did use black. You can see where he used the black marker or crayon or paint, whatever he used to delineate his different color areas. So that's kind of what we're doing today. All right, so now that I've got that pretty dark, I'm going to fill it in with my tempera paints. So let's see, I think I'm going to start with my orange for my sun, my setting sun. And I'm going to paint the sun there. And I'm going to try to stay in my black lines as much as possible. Once again, remember, we're not perfect, we're creating. And I am the artist, and if I want to make my orange go other places, I can, just like you can. All right, so there's some orange. And let's see, I think I'm going to use some red. Maybe one of my mountains will be red. I'm going to finish this mountain, then I'll show you where we're at. I hope that you're painting, whether you're using your tempera paints or your watercolor paints. I hope this is bringing you joy. Okay, here we go. So this is where I am so far. I've got my red mountain there, and I've got an orange sun. All right. Maybe I'll do some yellow. Should I add a little bit of yellow? Maybe around the sun I'll add a little bit of yellow. I don't have a lot of yellow paint left. All right, so I'm going to paint yellow up here, I think. So maybe this is sunrise then, because my yellow sky here is kind of maybe the start of the day. But you can do whatever. You could do a nighttime one. Use dark colors. Maybe you do a sunset and the sky's getting darker and darker. Or maybe you might want to do a different thing in the landscape. Maybe you might want to do a river or like trees in the background. Okay, so here we go. This is where I am so far. And if we look at his work, right, clearly my work is not his work. My work is my work, but you can see the inspiration there. I did do one yesterday that's dry, so let me show you the one from yesterday. There we go. So I used really bright colors, really fun colors, really simple shapes. So you get a sense that it's a landscape. This one kind of, I used the color palette from this one. Let me show you this one again, remember? Okay. So there we go. So today we're going to use our paints and our black crayon and our paper to create a landscape painting of our very own, inspired by the art of the British Canadian painter Ted Harrison. Have a great day. See you next time.